All right.
Hey, Adriana from On Screen Love Affair. How's it going?
Hold on.
He messes the name up again. Sorry, by the way.
We'll start.
Oh,
in
On Screen
3.
Love. I'm kidding.
Also, okay? Speaking of names, you've been calling it the companion, but it's just companion.
Companion, yeah.
There's no the.
Me?
No, Brandon consistently has been calling it the companion.
Dude, I have a lot of problems with the way Brandon's brain's been working lately, but I feel like we'll be getting into those in the nearest future. So
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we even need an intro?
No,
we're just in it. So...
Welcome to another episode of Talkies. I'm Shea, joined, of course, by Adriana and Brandon. We got a couple movies we're going to talk about in this episode. The first of which is Companion. Not The Companion, as Brandon's been calling it. Adriana and I saw this one with our friend Sam a few weeks ago now in VIP, part of our marathon day that Sam and I had. And when did you see this one, Brandon?
So similarly, I saw in the VIP, I want to say last week or a weekend or two ago. It did seem to have a huge shelf life in theaters. So I went out to see it, I think opening week, maybe on a Tuesday. And yeah, I do want to actually touch on the VIP thing. We're talking about two movies today. They occupy a very similar space as far as being a $10 million horror with a bunch of comedy. And I went to go see this movie, VIP, and it started at exactly 7:40 on the dot. And then the movie that we were going to talk about after,
I don't believe you.
The Monkey, that started at 8. I want to say it was 8:06, and it was also a 7:40 screen time. But because it was AVX, Ultra AVX, it's I think VIP has been upping their game to be if you're paying for VIP, they're keeping that running. Because I was 1 minute late, and it was the opening title crawl. I'm holy cow. I'm not typically even a minute late. I hate when you see people walking in at that opening title crawl when it's been 20 minutes of pre-show ads and shit, so big gripe.
Consistently every movie I saw, I saw 3 movies in theaters yesterday. Everyone started 20 minutes after showtime. Almost on the dot.
And VIP seems to be the only time I've actually seen the consequence or had that pop up in a Canadian theater.
I'll keep an eye out for that.
Keep an eye out.
It would be an added benefit of the experience, but because the seats of VIP are nice, but I don't the screens are always really small. So I generally would try to avoid it now if I can, unless there's other reasons to go to VIP, with group or whatever.
It's nice when you're doing a marathon and you want a break from sitting on uncomfortable seats.
100%.
Especially at the Forum, not to dunk on the Forum here, but I hate those seats so bad. But anyway, I almost messed it up. Companion. I want to give a special shout out as we dive into this because I won't get into spoilers right away. I think it'd be good if we all just give our general impressions out of the gate and then not for long and then just dive in. But by the time this is up, you can read my review on screenloveaffair.com as well. That will be up by the time this goes up. But I overall enjoyed the movie. I gave it a rating on our scale. I will say avoid trailers on this. Try to go in if you haven't seen the movie and you're listening to this and you're thinking about watching the movie. Stop here, come back after, and watch it. I think we all liked it enough to definitely recommend it. But I will say, my friend Kevin, I specifically said to him in a text, he's are you going to see the movie? I said, yes, I am. And he's like, oh, it looks good. I'm like, well, I'm dodging all trailers. I don't want to know anything about it. And then he spoiled the first act twist to me. And I was like, why would you do that?
All the marketing and marketing posters.
Right, and I know it gives
it
away, but I dodged all of it. So I had no clue. And then literally the day before I go to see it, Kevin's like, well, it's about this. And I went, oh, you dick. I was so pissed.
I know we're not spoiling things. I know we're not spoiling things right away, but I feel there's a couple more twists in it that even the marketer is heck it, let's spoil that first act twist. Because you're going to have a few more that trump it, and we'll get into that later.
I feel like the teaser for this movie was so perfect because it doesn't give anything away. It's like very intriguing, and then the rest of the marketing kind of spoils it. And I also went in with that first twist spoiled, and while there are other twists and turns in the movie that surprised me and that I thought were good, I think if I had gone in totally blind, those first like 20-30 minutes would have been so much better.
Yeah,
because I was just like, it's so telegraphed once you know, and it's just like, okay, let's get to the reveal here.
Totally. So while you're going, you liked it then too? I didn't want to speak for you, but I'm pretty sure like we both seemed to enjoy it.
I definitely liked it. I enjoyed it. I thought we had a good time. But I think it's like part of this crop of like a recent horror comedy-ish movies that all feel kind of the same to me, or like they're all sort of part of the same, I don't know, grouping, like stylistically, tonally, and it's fine. Like they're just fine. Yeah, kind
to
of
jump
inoffensive.
onto that. Now, when you say that it's stylistically kind of grouped in, are you talking about other movies that have, you know, and I guess this is anybody's time to tune out a little bit when it comes to like mild spoilers. But again, the first act twist is pretty on the table, I'd say. So tune out if you don't care. But are you lumping that in with other movies that get really hyper conscious about AI and they make like the horror, you know, artificial intelligence ex machina, you know, type thing? Or are you lumping it in with other contemporary pieces?
Not even necessarily sci-fi. Like, I'm thinking of like
structurally,
not even structural. Like it's almost like I'm having a hard time articulating it, and I can't even really articulate it in my own brain. But it's like a certain slew of recent movies that I, in my mind, are sort of in the same category, and like I would put this and Abigail in like a similar category, where it's like well done, and there's like some notable mid-range actors that, you know, people enjoy, you know, whatever, and they're kind of funny. Yeah, I don't know, but it's like not really, it's not what I want the most out of a horror movie or like sci-fi or genre fiction. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe structurally is not the right word, but I think that's what I meant. Whatever, like the vibe you're picking up on is what I mean. Like, in this vein where I feel like it, like, yeah, there's these horror comedy elements, but then there's like the third acts always feel like these more, okay, now we got to be a little bit more serious, and we have to like kind of like, you know, get emotion and things built in, and you got to care about the characters, and it's like, well, like we're here for the funny setup, like in the ballerina, like I talk about it in my companion review if people have read it. Like, my problem with Abigail was that in the third act, when we're watching the child ballerina vampire and Dan Stevens having a good time, we break in the middle of a chase scene for the drug mom to call and be like, I'm going to leave a voicemail to her son uninterrupted for like 4 minutes for just for like an emotional beat that is completely unnecessary. And I agree as far as companion goes. And I think like, at this point, I'm not saying anything spoiler immediately, but we might as well bust that door open. If you haven't watched the movie, tune out now. But the beat and the end, towards the end of this movie, kind of fell apart. Like, I felt like there was just a line was drawn at some point and the comedy just stopped. And it was like more of like a traditional chase or like, you know, fighting, kind of like just horror movie generically like that I'm like, okay.
Okay, what I would say is, first of all, I'm biting my tongue so hard I think I'm tasting some blood, because that is a very apropos for what I want to say about the next movie. But yeah, Companion, I feel like is a horror movie with comedy elements, you know? And I totally get what you mean about Abigail, where yeah, there is like that, like, you know, saving the cat of like, oh, she's a criminal who's abducting a child, but she's a single mom. And they really try to remind you near the third act, you know. But I think in The Companion, you know, it is a pretty straight-laced horror movie that has some humor, and the way they make the Huey guy, is it Jack Quaid, be such a fucking incel, you know what I mean? Like, It wasn't a comedy horror as much as I think it was a horror with comedy.
Not to be a Shea interruptus here, but having just written the review literally before we're recording this, Wikipedia is Wikipedia, but it's not even listed as horror. It's like black comedy thriller.
I was gonna say,
I feel like there's a sci-fi, so it's literally not even classified that as that. That was just Wikipedia, but just one thing I did note because I thought the same thing.
We're gonna be referencing Wikipedia a lot today.
I also would not classify Companion as a horror movie. I don't think it's like, it's more of like a sci-fi thriller.
I'd settle on sci-fi thriller for sure. Yeah, okay, fair enough. I think
Google calls it horror sci-fi, so this is all, again, not to get into the weeds of it all, but I feel like any movie where there's like blood and gore, basically, they're like, it's a horror movie. And I feel like that's an oversimplifying classification, obviously. But like, I get what you mean. I think a thriller is more
scary.
Yeah. No, I don't even know if there was like even an attempt at like a jump scare.
No.
Well, yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, I was never scared or
that. Yeah.
Maybe a little tense or maybe a little bit like, oh, no way. But yeah, I don't think I felt terror.
Thrilled?
Yeah, I felt thrilled, but no terror.
Yeah.
Now, okay, real quick, because I think we should just get into the banger spoilers, because we're all kind of circling the drain here. As far as this goes, I think my favorite criticism of all sci-fi thrillers or horrors or whatever, when someone goes, meh, mid, they go, this is just a good or bad Black Mirror episode with an extra 20 minutes. I personally enjoyed this quite a bit, and I wouldn't say that, but would either of you two agree and say like, oh, this is just like a primo Black Mirror episode or a long Black Mirror episode? Not necessarily good.
No, not.
I might say yes, honestly. Like I like up there with like the better side of Black Mirror, I would say for sure. Like it's not
Black Mirror.
Yeah, it's not like a forgettable thing. Like I said, I enjoyed it enough while it was there. I guess the elements that make it a little different, like again, from like kind of a themes perspective, is that it's not really so much of like the technology run amok as much as it is about like the boyfriend being a dick and like that kind of part of it. I feel is more the focus than the technology side of it, which I guess would make it slightly less. But like in the sense that like the bot person gone like awry or whatever, it's slightly different, I think, but like close enough that like I don't think that's terribly off base.
I would say that like the best Black Mirror episodes are better than this movie.
For sure. 1,000%.
Yeah.
Like 1 in 18 is really good, and this movie is just consistently what it is.
Yeah, well, it's hard to compare a movie to like a series that's in its like later.
A series of anthologies that are an hour-ish long. Yeah. I think it's easy to compare episode to episode. Like, what episode beats this, you Black Mirror fans?
I mean, but the thing with Black Mirror is tonally, it's a lot, like it's going more for like satire and like social commentary, and with the technological angle, and this movie just didn't really have that. Like it doesn't go too deep into that.
Yeah, it's like technology exaggerating like what does it do on the human condition, and like I don't know that that's like as what I would say is like tightly tied to this movie. Like again, it's not really
like there's like, a bit of that, but I think it's more of the commentary is on like gender dynamics than the actual like impact of technology, but it's all sort of intertwined.
I did kind of like that angle, like even though I'm like far from a feminist, I did like how it was kind of like, look at this unfuckable loser, Jack Wade. Basically, like I think my favorite parts getting towards the end of the movie is when you get the IT guys showing up to kind of like rescue the scene, like diagnose what's going on. And it's really common, like for somebody to jailbreak their sex bot is like, they're like, oh yeah, you can tell that fucking weirdo did that. And it's like they address something that I thought about in a different movie. When you were saying this earlier about lumping movies together, there's a movie that came out called Subservience with Megan Fox as an AI sex bot that essentially kills to be with her man. Like very the opposite of this. It's like the antithesis of this with the exact same premise of sex bot goes crazy. All I could think is, in that movie, the guy's a down on his luck construction worker. His wife's in the hospital, but they're essentially somehow owning this sex bot that is like the peak of technology. It's a person, a housewife, a cleaner, like it's everything in one. And I love how in this movie they address that. They're like, bro, you're leasing the sex bot. Like you don't even own the sex bot. You have in a shitty apartment, you lease your sex bot. You know, it adds like the little bit of world building we get from that. I really appreciated that. It's like, oh, this down on luck incel type dude who is like trying to get rich quick. Like his villain story is really, really simple. I think they allude to it. They build it really softly and solidly. And other movies, again, like that, I just found like, how do you live in this world and have like an $80,000 Mercedes Benz of sex bots, Megan Fox, just, show up at your door when, you're getting like an eviction notice, like, so I appreciate that bit of lore. Did you guys have like highlights or like, what do you think of the world building or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I thought the like little touches were nice and well done. Like the little reveal that like, oh yeah, they're always recording, because like, of course, if a company was making these, like they would just be recording and collecting data all the time, and he didn't think of that. Or like the car that drives itself, and like the voice change, like the settings too for the bot, and like the way they could customize things.
A lot of good little vignettes like that for sure, where they show you can pitch up and down the voice. And instead of like in a horror movie, they're fumbling for the keys to get into the car. It's, her trying to adjust her own voice to do the auto start with Jack Quaid's voice. Yeah, I think that was like a funny and again, like hyper modern, very near future setup. They did a little bit more with that like near future premise than some, Black Mirror episodes tend to do. So yeah, I don't know. I thoroughly enjoyed a lot of it.
I think I agree with I agree pretty much with all the highlight parts. I want to talk a little bit about the script stuff, because I think there was some issues for me about, like, we talked about reveals and twists and things. I really did not. This really felt like a movie that didn't trust the audience whatsoever. I would be curious, again, like it's obviously colored by the fact that I knew what the reveal was about her being a robot, but like right away, like I felt like, there were some pretty interesting signs in the first 20 or so minutes before they reveal ultimately that she is a robot. That there were all those signs there that like, oh, when she says the weather, and or like the very opening scene where it's this very weird, like idyllic grocery store that feels weird and not real. It's because it's not real. It's a manufactured memory. So like those parts I thought were kind of clever. I don't know that I would have exactly clocked it necessarily. Like I can't say that for sure. But what really bothered me was like it really undercut, like, so the moment she goes AWOL and kills that guy, we see Jack Quaid, Dick would like grab a memory card and put it in and do something with his phone. So like we instantly know, and then the cuts from that to her like all of a sudden killing this guy or whatever, and it's like we instantly know that he's doing something, and I feel like it just really like held our hand, and then like any other kind of like plot reveals that came after, like I felt like everything just seemed very like spoon-fed, even like discounting again the first part because I can't say, but like I didn't know anything else beyond that. But like yeah, it felt weird because they were still like, when a movie shows you, like when you're ahead of the character, like what happened and they don't, and there's this weird disconnect. So then the reveal, like if you don't already know she's a bot, like the reveal instantly happens the moment you see him do something on the phone and then she go AWOL. Like you're like, okay, something's up. And so like I felt like there was like all the moments kind of that followed that really kind of lacked for me in any like surprise or intrigue even. And I felt like that they should have been a lot stronger.
Are you saying like they should have kept in her perspective a bit more for like that moment, to like
you
her
don't need
pass
to cut
out,
to him at all. You don't need to cut to Jack Quaid at all.
I can see that.
Think some of those early bits that are overly telegraphed are like, if you know the twist, it's like so obvious.
Yeah,
like
for
some of
sure.
the dialogue too, like when the
I'm not built that way.
I'm not built that way. Or like the
oh yeah,
the
she goes. The other woman goes like, yeah, I think it was like, yeah, you know what that's like to be an object. Like there
Yeah,
was, to be owned by a man, you're
yeah,
like,
and the way she says it too, like, oh, who am I talking
Look
to?
who
Of
might see.
course
Yeah.
you know.
yeah,
Yeah,
look who I'm talking. Yeah, yeah. There's those moments because like so I saw this with my girlfriend Renata, and she didn't like, it wasn't on her radar. I didn't think about it. Like I was just like, oh, this is a really good movie. I try not to spoil it for her. And so she was like a little bit like kind of like, oh, when it happened. But yeah, I definitely like exactly what you said. Like when you know the twist, that first 30 minutes feels really disingenuous. Like there's so many lines that are like winking at you, and they would have felt way more clever had it not been so telegraphed again in the marketing. And like Shay said, like spoon feeding us that like, iPhone moment.
yeah.
Did you guys
I
find the secondary twist to be like more surprising? And like I felt like that warranted or made up for what I felt like was a really big spoiler from the trailers when they reveal the second android in the movie, and you look back like, oh, they weren't drinking or really eating. How would this hunk get with this kind of like schleppy guy? Like that was a little bit my immediate
I
judgment.
kind of clocked it at the moment they are at the table and they're talking about how they first met. And
Yeah,
cute.
same
I
visual
thought that
language.
like the way that they were interacting with each other, I immediately was like, I wonder if he is too. And then
Yeah,
I caught that other stuff. Like I'm like, yeah, that's right. Like he's cooking, like he's doing stuff. He's working, but he's not enjoying in the way that everybody else was. So like that moment didn't give it away. Like, but it kind of flipped the switch for me to start considering that, and then I did.
that twist definitely sort of like got like I didn't clock it, like so it worked for me. Like I didn't guess it ahead of time. Like, oh, is he it? But I just thought it was bad writing that that they had like an overly perfect. I was like, okay, great. The token gay couple is like just being glossed over, whatever. I don't really care about this. And was just like, okay, like, can we get back to. And then they did the reveal, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
I definitely had that thought too, where it was like I was so kind of tired of them hitting us over the head with like, oh, she's a robot, wink, wink. And so when he's like, oh, we fell in love this way, I was like, oh, they're really just trying to make us feel bad that she doesn't know because we clearly know. Like she's empathizing with his like meet cute story. And I'm like, oh, it's kind of like sad now that she's like, oh, wow, you guys are so in love. You met just like us. And then when you reveal, it's like, that's why it feels so similar and so like hammed up and corny and romantic. You're like, so like you, like, it did hit me kind of hard because I was kind of preemptively judging, like, I know she's a
Yeah.
robot. This is just so much like cheese. And then when I do like how they reincorporate that meet cute story to like some of the glitchiness later, where he's like reprogramming Jack Quaiden and they just like shot for shot recreate it. I thought that was like a fun little visual. Again, very Black Mirror esque, where they like that would be like the whole premise, just recreating that scene to hammer home how like manipulatable these guys are.
Yeah, I think yeah, like I really liked all there's a lot of clever stuff in there, and there was ways that I think like it could have been a little more like drawn out and interesting that way with a few minor tweaks, but like overall I think there was some like good stuff in there. I think just more on the execution side, and I think like the plot uh like the sort of the overall structural narrative beats they were trying to like create, I felt like kind of weighed it down. But
Yeah.
like that was really my only gripe with it. Like I thought it was like I didn't not enjoy it. I had fun while we were there. It was like a fun. The performances were really good. Like
Yeah, Jack Quaid is just
yeah,
so
as
good
a
at
hateable, like, because
playing
I think I've only
an
seen him
asshole.
in The Boys, and so he's
Yeah.
like a super timid, nice guy. But like the line from super timid, nice guy to like incel is very thin, and he jumped it very well. And I thought was like a really good, um, like and believable like asshole,
Yeah,
especially in the back half of this movie or so.
He's also in the Scream movies, and without spoiling those movies, he is a very similar character to some degree,
Okay.
like an obsessive guy. I really think is it Lucas Cage, the guy that plays Patrick, like his android. I feel like he did the most like pretty boy emoting, and like I really liked his like when he's like crying, talking about like how love felt or whatever. Like I feel like he had the most to chew on. And I think there's also, again, more world building I want to shout out. When he's playing the cop near the end of the movie, and the guy's like, "Do I recognize you?" And he doesn't, because he's like, "Oh, this is a really old sex bot." And they hint at the guy, Eli or Harvey Julien, the guy from What We Do in the Shadows, the big heavier set guy. He hints at like, "Oh, I really do love my sex bot. I haven't upgraded because I love him so much." And then later they do incorporate like, "Oh, it's a really old one. I don't know who keeps these around." So it's like almost more sad that like he was kind of like played that, you know, he was a greedy fuck, but he also did care. And I think at the reveal when he's like, "Oh, we're gonna split it 4 ways," I like Renata and I looked at each other like, what a greedy ass couple. They didn't do any of the legwork. Clearly they split 1/3 in that murder triangle. Like they're 1 point of the triangle of murder. And then when they like essentially pause to break down and be like, "He's a fuckbot, we're not cutting it," I was like, oh, I was so greedy myself that I was like, no way are they cutting in them as an equal part. But like that revealed to me, I was already so caught up on the mental math of like how I would split the money in that scenario. So I found myself like buying in quite a lot for the concept, I guess. I went on a tangent, but yeah.
I'm never going to a cabin with Brandon and Renata is what I just heard, because I'm not, especially if I have money anywhere nearby. Yeah, no, like I think too, the fact that there was a lot of detail and clever elements, it made me almost more disappointed in the elements that I thought weren't as strong, because like evidently they could have been a little better, because they showed like there was a lot of good stuff in there. And like all of those little details, it's like, okay, you guys, like it's there, you couldn't do it. But like, yeah, I don't know if it was studio notes. Like that's another big thing you hear about a lot today, is that like studio notes are like, they're wildly untrusting of the audience. Like you need to lay things out and explicitly. So like, I don't know how much of that would have been a factor, but like, yeah, it just felt really weird, because there was a lot of good detail that rewarded you paying attention. But then a lot of it too that was just served up in the most obvious way it possibly could have. Which, like I said, made it more of a stumbling block for me, but nothing like to derail it. I still think it was definitely an enjoyable movie.
I think just to add to that too, another little detail, and I think we're going to get into it a lot in the next one. The Chekhov's gun, you know, I think that in this one, you know, the thing they set up in the first act that comes back in the third.
That.
Yeah, the only real futuristic prop outside of the car and the fuckbots themselves, sorry, the sex dolls, are it's a electronic wine opener, and it's like this violently like electronic pop, and it kind of like, it's a little bit of like a jump scare. I think they use it in the wine opening scene. I can't remember if they use it again, but when that's like the ultimate like final girl weapon, that was sick.
I think they do it twice, and it's like
Twice.
very noticeable.
They telegraph
so
it so big, and like, yeah, I
was
love
like
that. I popped hard for that.
expecting it to get used on an eyeball too. So when it ended up being the temple, I was like, oh yes, fuck yeah.
Because it was so, I knew the moment, like it's so, and again, this one I kind of give them more credit for. Like it was so obvious from the first use, like when they get there and they use it, the thunk is so loud, it is so exaggerated that I'm like, that's gonna kill, like instantly. And I was giddy, like it was an excitement, like it wasn't like an incredibly subtle one, like it was subtle enough, but like the moment I heard that loud thonk, and then it happens again, thonk, and you're like, all right, yeah, and it built the excitement. So when that finally hit, like I really popped for it. But yeah, it was, again, I wonder how much that would translate to, again, that loudness. If you watch that at home, like, is it as noticeable than, you know, the better sound? But that was the trigger for me that immediately just like the loudest sound in the world. I was like, oh, okay, that's definitely gonna be used. Yeah, I do the same thing too. Pop out an eyeball or something like that.
The whole audience in my theater, and again, it wasn't even a huge theater, it was the VIP. The whole audience was like cheering almost, and that
it was a great crowd pleaser.
Yeah,
for sure. I think because the first time it popped, I was like, cheap jump scare. Second time it popped, I'm like, they're incorporating this. I think because I'm a slow person. And then, when at the end they're fumbling on the ground fighting for their life, and then you see she reaches for something, and as soon as I think I even leaned over, was like, it's gonna be the wine corker. That was.
Well, you're one of
like
those
said,
guys.
I popped hard.
Oh my God, I'm making
too.
you sit 2 seats away from me next.
But yeah, I guess we're at that point. Any final thoughts on Companion? Not the Companion.
I mean, I don't think I don't really have much to add. Like I said, the review's up there. It was definitely an enjoyable enough watch. I think if you watch it, you'll enjoy the time spent, and it's also not super long or takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
It was well paced, even when, like I said, even near the end where it wasn't working as well for me, I didn't dislike it. It just wasn't as good as what came before it. So
Yeah, agreed. Well said.
I'd agree, but I'd say, like, to what you said, I probably liked it like 10 or 20% more. I found it like if you gave it a number rating, I'd give it like a star or a number higher. I think I explicitly was really excited for this one after watching lesser quality versions like Subservience.
mm-hmm.
If we didn't talk about this on the pod, Renata and I are going to sit down in like our like living room and do like an episode for a rainy day that's going to be comparing those two. Like our double feature would have been that, just so we like, hey, because we had so much to say about Subservience, and it was such a terrible Netflix original that was this exact premise of like AI sex doll goes crazy, 4K. But yeah, so no, I liked it a little more, I'd say, but I'm glad you guys also found it enjoyable.
It was a fun time. Nothing too subtle or deep, but I had fun. That's kind of all I really have to say about it.
Yeah, which is a lot more than I can say about our next feature, The Monkey.
Actually,
Shit.
The Monkey, not just Monkey.
Yeah, I said The Monkey, didn't I?
Yeah, I know you did. I'm just saying you're correct when you say this time.
I almost made a point to go, unlike our next feature, Monkey, and then wait for one of you to correct me. But yeah, off the top, I kind of low-key hated it, and we're about to argue for the next 30 minutes.
Yeah,
Shay, do you want to start us off because you're a ray of sunshine?
I want Adriana to go on the non-spoiler thoughts for this one, and then we can dig in.
Perfect.
I figured I would have to be the mediator here. But
yeah, summarize it without spoiling it. Get us into it because we're going to get too into it.
I did write a review of this movie. You can read it on screenloveaffair.com. So I'll just summarize my thoughts.
We're getting mad good at those plugs, by the way.
So Shea and I saw this a week ago-ish, like in an advanced screening. And so I went into this movie not knowing anything about it. I haven't read the Stephen King short story. All I knew is that it was Oz Perkins. And I've liked everything he's done before to varying degrees. Like I've never really disliked his stuff. And yeah, it's about two brothers who find a toy monkey and then it starts killing people in really like gruesome, violent ways. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with this movie. It was not what I expected at all. Like tonally, I did not expect it to be as funny as it was because I went in thinking this would be like more along the lines of his other movies, which tend to be a bit more like serious and like atmospheric and stuff.
Now, when you say other movies, you mean Gretel and Hansel and Legally Blonde?
I haven't seen Gretel and Hansel.
And Legally Blonde is also a critically acclaimed horror movie, you think?
Well, he's stars in Legally Blonde. He didn't direct it or write it or anything.
Yeah, Brandon out here reading Wikipedia pages, making himself look like a goober. This is going to help my case in the next 25 minutes.
All right, please continue. There's a lot of Wikipedia consulting today.
But yeah, I think it's a stupid, silly movie. It's fun and over the top, and there's like it reminded me of Final Destination in certain ways, in that it's like it's not supposed to be taken seriously. Yeah, I don't know, it was fun. It wasn't like mind blowing or like my favorite movie ever, but like I liked it.
Did you like it more than Companion?
I would say yes, just because it's like weirder and like surprised me more. Like I don't know. I found
it goes a lot harder,
like more
for sure.
Like we talked about, more of the beats were telegraphed and like it just was fine. Like it didn't really do anything to blow me away. Sort of like a group of the thing I was trying to get at was like these movies that don't really go out of the box too far. They're all just sort of a little predictable, a little kind of polished, but not like super
Formulaic.
high budget, formulaic. Yeah. Whereas this was like weird. It was weird in a way that I liked a lot.
Yeah, I think for me, like what I pretty much agree with Adriana in terms of like, oh, well, basically all of that. I do like it more than Companion. For me, it was like in that same vein. I think I said this to you as soon as the movie ended. It was so refreshing to see something that was just this purely what it was. And there is moments in this movie that we'll definitely talk about, I'm sure, in a little bit. But even when you think this movie is reaching for another, like a serious moment that's breaking this, it consistently undercuts itself. And I like adored that because, like I said, it's like you're this big third act moment and there's like a climax happening. And, you know, this movie has been a Looney Tunes cartoon almost in live action format. Like they call it, like they said, Itchy and Scratchy was a big inspiration for this, and it definitely feels that way. And then as this moment, you think you're like, oh, okay, well, but here we're getting the shoehorned in emotional beat, and it's undercut. It's undercut. You're laughing. They're like, it's absurd. It's stupid. And I think the purity of this movie, this is not high art in that sense. This is not layers of depth, but like, yeah, I had an absolute blast. Like this was super fun. But it's incredibly simple. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that because like not every movie has to be the same thing. And like, I think where I had a bit more of a calibration for this, like I had seen the trailer, the teaser, thank God, because I think the trailer is terrible. It gives away way too much. So if you don't watch the trailer, but the teaser was okay enough where it definitely sells you the tone. And like, there's a scene where, it's not a big spoiler or anything important, but there's a scene where this woman's literally running, pushing a baby stroller that's on fire. Like, I knew instantaneously what the tone of this movie was going to be from that. And if it's not clear from marketing, the opening scene of this movie very much sets the tone for what you are in store for. And like, I think it's unquestionable, like how consistent that is. And so I think like for me, this was just a lot of fun. And frankly, I'll be honest, as a transition comment to Brandon, I'm surprised, and I don't know if it has anything to do with expectation. Like perhaps we'll get into that, but I'm really kind of surprised how there's negative like reaction to this, as if like there's confusion about what this was intending to be, when I think without a doubt, without looking at marketing, without looking at interviews, this movie makes it exceedingly clear what it is and what it's trying to be and what it's trying to save, for the record, which is also a simple point that we'll get into. But yeah, like to me, this was just a lot of fun, and there wasn't much more to it than that. It was fun in a way that you don't see as often in these like very exaggerated. Like, I agree with your take on the Final Destination. Where I think this differs, though, as well, is that Final Destination, I think the thing with Final Destination, at least in the earlier ones, I hadn't seen all of them, but like in those earlier ones that I remember as a kid, they play on like somewhat real fears. Like the iconic one is the log truck, and like, what if that chain snapped and it all, and they intentionally set things up to be a thrilling, nervous, scary moment.
Okay, I gotta hop in here. I'm dying.
I'm
dying not talking here.
Let Adriana go before you start.
Just to clarify my comment about Final Destination, I do think, yeah, you're right. There's like these key differences. My comparison was more just like, it feels like the movie is just almost like an excuse to showcase a bunch of different creative, like, gory kills. In that sense, I think it's like similar to Final Destination.
Okay, I gotta hop in on that one. My biggest gripe with the movie, because I think I left the theater and I texted Shea being like, I am so let down. Like, I was like, I can't wait to talk about this. I was pissed, and this movie is right up my alley. I think Shea's confusion is like, oh, such a Brandon pick. Like, I put Long Legs in my top 10 last year begrudgingly, because I was really excited for something that had that atmosphere. And like to what you were saying, Shay, when you said like, oh, how did you not know what this was? I'm like, all the marketing is like produced by James Wan with Oz Perkins from Longlegs. And to be fair, this movie delivers so hard on some creepy visuals. And earlier when you're like, yeah, the story by Stephen King, pretty mid-tier dog shit. But that's the point. It's like the visuals for the horror were so strong and all the comedy undercut it so hard and swiftly that I just kind of kept finding myself being like, why do I care about any of these characters? Why do I care about this adoption? Like, I know you're about to go off and be like, well, that's the point. Elijah Wood, Frodo is going to be like, that was kind of funny. But I was so mad because like keeping it back to Final Destination, the visual language in this movie let me down the most. And I've hinted at this a little bit, but like in Final Destination, they go through so much time to set up tension for these. Like you said, they base it on a real world thing. I'm not saying I need that from this. Like, I think if you remove like that, like, oh, that could be us. That could be our roller coaster. It could be our plane. It could be our log jam on the highway. Like, I totally get that. But that opening scene was great. You know, when they show the rat chew the wire, chews the fit, and then it pulls his entrails out. I think that was really good. But a lot of the kills preceding that aren't super consistent with it. I know that's the point. They can't spend everyone being amazing. But as the movie progressed, the death had less hit. And it was almost because of the editing. They didn't let us enjoy the goriness as much. Like when the realtor gets blown up by the shotgun, it's just so quick and kind of whatever. The big, like the lady jumping in the pool and exploding, that was spoiled for me in the only trailer I saw. And I'm like, and I remember seeing it in the theater being like, I wish I saw that in the movie. That undercut that scene completely for me. That would have been a great period punctuating that scene with that like dramatic reveal that his brother's alive and in town still on the phone. And then she jumps in the pool. He's like, wait. I was like, oh, fuck. That sucks so hard that was spoiled because that would have been probably the funniest death. The rest of the deaths, other than maybe like the sleeping bag.
Did they actually show the explosion in the trailer, though? Like,
yeah.
Not the one that I saw.
I think she explodes and it goes to a title card. So it's like, boom, onto the screen.
Okay, because the teaser
like a lot
definitely doesn't show the explosion. And that to me is like, just to speak on that note quickly, is the point of this. Is like, I saw like in the teaser, you see the electricity going into the pool and you're like, oh, she's going to jump in and be electrocuted. No, she fucking explodes. Like,
like
completely,
it's stupid.
It's completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's not at all. And like that to me, I had no idea. Like I said, I went in thinking she would get electrocuted. And the fact that she exploded, like I was busting a gut laughing because it's so absurd. And like, okay, but I want to hone in on what you were saying. Like, how much of this do you think was your expectation? Because I just want to clarify my point with this. You like Longlegs more than me, without question. The thing I did not like about Longlegs was I felt there was two movies occurring. There was the very, like you said, incredible, like genuinely the best of that, probably of last year, of like this kind of thrilling, tense, atmospheric, scary horror. And then we were doing the scenes with Nick Cage being Nick Cage. And that, at least some people have said that they found it very scary and whatever. Our theater did not have that experience. And it wasn't even my fault, I don't think. Like, I went there with a bunch of Cage. Like, it was opening night. We went opening night.
There was a lot the waters with your shirt.
I did wear my Nick Cage shirt, but like the crowd in our movie cheered in the opening title cards when Nick Cage's name came up. Not like an incredibly loud one, but there was people that cheered for that.
They undercut it for themselves.
Right. And I think I still don't know, like even absent that I could have looked at that any differently. But for me, like I don't know. Has anyone seen Malignant here?
Yes, I was going to compare this to Malignant because I saw Malignant, was supposed to love it, and I also left the theater with the same taste in my mouth.
Okay, but then this is
worse.
I'm 1,000% convinced then that this is a problem of you bringing expectation to the movie. Malignant, I want to clarify, Malignant was sold as like Insidious,
James Wan's Insidious franchise.
It was exactly like, it was very much sold like that. I watched the trailers. It looks like, oh, it's just this by the numbers kind of supernatural movie. I watched Chris Stuckman's review where he's like, this is not what that movie is. It is like a B-movie schlock meant to be funny and all of this stuff. So I went in with me and Ty, went into that theater, and it was when we were in BC. It was not a sold-out theater, but there was a lot of people in there. And
COVID as well.
Me and Ty were having the best time. We were laughing so fucking hard because instantaneously that movie, like, we're at like a Gotham City from a Joel Schumacher-esque hospital on a cliff. And the lady's like, we need to cut out the cancer as the camera slowly zooms in. I was me and Ty were wheezing. Every fucking person in that theater, dead silent. No one knew except Ty and I what movie we were there to watch. And I really think, like, the things you like about Longlegs, I also liked about Longlegs. But this movie is not at all trying to be that. And even you projecting this idea that the scary elements are done well, they are, but they are also immediately undercut because it's meant to be funny. So there's like one scene that stands out in particular where the monkey appears on his shelf and it goes, whoa, and it zooms in on the monkey, and then it immediately undercuts it by like cutting away from it instantly because it's meant to be funny. It is not meant to scare you. It's not meant to be this deep horror thing. And so I feel like if you wanted that and you're projecting that onto the movie, that's obviously going to impact
the
your
movie
viewing
was trying to get me
experience.
to feel that. The movie is trying to do this story about generational trauma being passed on.
No, I disagree 1,000%.
I feel like this movie is
even
serious.
Really tries to be scary. Like we were talking about like whether Companion was a horror movie or not. I almost wouldn't classify this as a horror movie too. Like, it's definitely more so, but to me it's more of a comedy with horror elements. It's very much in the vein of like Evil Dead, like very over the top, very stupid, like Army of Darkness type, like unserious.
I'm sorry, but I like fundamentally disagree with both of you guys on that. I think there are scenes in this movie that were in the trailers that sold it as being a scary movie. There are scenes where, you know, he's looking out. You need to
send me the trailer you watched where this was sold as a scary movie. Because I've seen
one
3
trailer
different
I saw
ones.
had like goofy ass
I've
music.
seen 3 different ones now that all indicate this was not meant to be some scary
movie. So I'm just saying, like there are scenes where, you know, he's looking out of his front porch at night with the fear of paranoia, and in the corner of the frame they start zooming in slowly, and he sees the monkey and his eyes are lighting up. Like, there are very masterfully done horror shots in this.
Okay, but that shot made me laugh. Like, I know exactly what you're talking about, and it like killed me. I was like, this is
because it's zooming in on a fucking monkey toy. Like, it's not. It in and of itself also is not a scary item. Like, it looks weird, but it in itself, like, it's not getting up and killing you. Like, the fact that you're scared of the monkey is dumb. Not like you specifically, like, I mean, like, it's a toy. It only works if you do something to it.
Hey, don't call it a toy, man. You can't call it a toy. I'm just saying, like, if you compare it to other movies in the James Wan camp, like, was it Dead Silence?
He produced it. What are you talking about James Wan for?
I'm talking about stuff that he's into, stuff that he's, you know, put out there.
But you just said, like, one movie that, did he not make Malignant, I believe.
Malignant, yeah. And I'm saying
that was exactly in the same family as this movie.
I'm saying I agree with you. I left that movie so mad with it, and it took me a while to come back around and go, oh, like you said, make an agreement with the movie. And this movie was a movie that I was waiting for a moment where I could like sign the agreement that was on the table, and I never had that moment because it kept making me want more. And maybe this is me projecting more of my issues with Longlegs. You said about Longlegs, it was like there's 2 different movies. And to be fair, in Longlegs, it felt like it was 2 different movies because it shifted near the end, and it was way more paranormal, and there was less mystery. And with this movie...
by that metric, I would mean 3 different movies.
Yeah, okay, well, with this movie, it felt like there's 2 movies that were bipolarly intercut. I think every scene where he's talking to his son about, like, the adoption was just such a waste of screen time because everything else was so strong. I wish there was just something fucking else in there to glue that together.
I will agree with you there. Like, I do think some of the family drama and like the adoption stuff was a little like I didn't care about it. And there's like this loose thread of like what's gonna happen with Elijah Wood that like the whole movie,
never comes back.
Expecting
so many loose threads.
Expecting him to either show up or like they would, you know, he would die.
Even a cameo at the end. Yeah, he dies. That cameo, like he drives his son home at the end of the movie, and again, you guys like it's unserious. he sees the fucking the white horse with the shadow of death riding it, and it's like, what is that? Like they throw in those like quotes and then they pay it off. And like, I was talking about like the Chekhov's gun thing earlier. They set up so many things, and some of them come back as like a nod to be like, see, look how clever that is. But the story itself is just left like a loose thread in the wind. Like, I just wish the through line that glued these elements that are so fantastic, both the horror visuals that I keep saying felt really vibey and great, like Longlegs, and the funny effects. Like, I loved when the ant, actually, I don't think I loved it. I liked it when the ant was on fire and she runs into the sign, they freeze frame on that. I understood what that movie was at that point. I knew it at that point. And then
it
the
took
sleeping
you that
bag.
long?
Well, I went in mostly blind, minus a trailer, mostly blind. But let me just like summarize: is I think the story was so painful, and it made me think. My immediate thought is, this is why it's a short story, and this is why it's a Stephen King adaptation that is not wildly popular. You know, how many It's have there been? How many?
See,
you know.
Okay, I haven't read the short story, but I was reading the plot of it because I was curious, and basically everything from what I can gather, this is like wildly different from the story. The short story is like very serious.
They should have changed more.
Shit.
It's also just a setup, really, in the short story.
Yeah,
like, it's really the premise of it.
I think I read somewhere like that Oz Perkins only agreed to do this movie if he could do it his way and do it funny, because he was like, I can't. Like, yeah, he has a very, I guess I was reading an interview, he's had a lot of like unexpected death and tragedy in his family, but he's like, the only way I can like sort of approach that is with absurdity, with a smile, I think is how he put it. And yeah, I don't know, I thought that element worked, but yeah, the Stephen King of it all is like felt pretty minimal. Like it.
Yeah, and I wondered how much was Stephen King. Like, I thought the twins thing was Stephen King. I thought it was really stupid having that hot guy from was it The Gentleman and was it White Lotus as this nerdy Hank, or is it Hank? What's the guy's name? The main character. I saw this Hal. Yeah, Hal. The guy, the actor playing adult Hal. I just found him to be like not amazing because he is a wildly handsome and contemporarily popular guy. So to him play this, like, again, nerdy incel dad that's rejecting life because of his trauma, that's the story. He's traumatized by death, so he doesn't want to see his son and expose him to what could be his trauma.
His son. Pulling up a quote, which I wanted to read too, but it was from an interview about the script. But like, just to touch on that part of it, like, yes, I agree. Like, the story, the theme, like, there's not an emotional, like, very like poignant story here whatsoever, but I also at the same time think it's kind of absurd to require that in a movie like this. That is not the point of this movie. And like, I like, for people that were like again, like I said, this is super simple, this is very clear and direct. Like, there is, and like, I know the backstory, like, so for Osgood Perkins, his dad was the star of Psycho, the original Psycho, who died of AIDS and was like a closeted homosexual, died of AIDS, and then his mom died in 9/11, and that happened within 10 years. So for that guy, basically the premise of this movie is laugh in the face of death because there's nothing else you can do, and like, let's dance. That is the only emotional beat worth really anything in the movie, and that's how it ends. They set that up competently, like, it's all there, like, it works. But like, that's not at all, and all of the things Adriana and I talked about why we like this movie, like, we didn't bring up the script or even the theme really as anything like incredibly poignant or moving or anything else like that.
Yeah,
but let me that aren't poignant or interesting.
Well, but it's meant to be pure fun. Like, is there anything wrong with that? Like, I don't
fun
see that, but
fun sounds very subjective.
Like, the biggest like indicator of that, I think, is the sort of emotional reunion with the brothers where they're like, we're gonna, you know what, you should join us on our road trip, and it's like he's gonna have a redemption arc sort of thing, and then he just gets fucking destroyed by a bowling ball. or whatever it is, a canon. Like,
agree to an extent. I think when they had that moment and they were reconciling, and again, corniness, I did love that the brother was like a supervillain wearing his childhood funeral suit that they hinted at again. They set that
the
up
Guy
with like,
Fieri Flames shirt.
yeah. I like the wardrobe choice. Again, I got the corniness, but I found myself in theater thinking, I won't let the excuse of it's supposed to be corny. It's because they waste so much time with like the family dynamic drama of the adoption and like the element again of not passing on trauma. Like, I swear, like we're reading the same pages. I was just so frustrated that it's like they're focusing on that for screen time, and then it's stacking up to amazing little horror vignettes followed by over the top goriness. Which again, like I love those other 2/3 so much. It bothers me that they didn't stick the landing. They didn't bother to stick the landing. Yeah,
For
they
the
didn't
record,
bother.
there was one 3 to 4 minute scene where they really talk about the adoption. Like otherwise, it was just a mechanism of which
The
they
hotel,
were causing.
the car in the ex-wife's house with
Yeah,
Frodo
all
Baggins.
of these are bit like moments that like there's one scene with Elijah Wood where that's like the focus of the scene, and then everything else is like just different plot beats to move things along. Like it's not like anything to get hung up on. But I want to read that Osgood Perkins
kidnapped.
quote. Let me read the Osgood Perkins quote because I think it's probably the one Adriana was referencing. But he said when he was approached about the movie first that they had a very serious script. I'm now quoting exactly, very serious. I felt it was too serious, and I told them, this doesn't work for me. The thing with this toy monkey is that the people around it all die in insane ways. So I thought, well, I'm an expert on that. Both my parents died in insane headline-making ways. I spent a lot of my life recovering from tragedy, feeling quite bad. It all seemed inherently unfair. You personalize the grief. Why is this happening to me? But I'm older now, and you realize this shit happens to everyone. Everyone dies. Sometimes in their sleep, sometimes in truly insane ways like I experienced. But everyone dies, and I thought maybe the best way to approach that insane notion is with a smile. That perfectly encapsulates every aspect of this movie, including the family stuff. So like his whole thing saying you personalize that trauma. Oh my God, my mom died, I killed her, whatever. It's my fault, why me? I can't shake the monkey, and I don't want to pass that down. The realization they have at the end of the meaning, like at the end of the movie, is that like all they can do is look death, the literal incarnation of death, as he walks in front of them, smile and nod and go dancing. Like that's the point. So like, do you need a post-credit scene where he goes, no, I'm not going to let you adopt my son because I've learned my lesson? Was that not clear enough in the car? Like, I don't understand.
No, I need a post-credit scene where Samuel L. Jackson asks the horse rider to join the Avengers because
honestly,
I
something like that
Captain
was the
America
most
movie.
Stephen King part of that movie. And I don't think that had anything to do with
I guess so.
the short story or anything like that. But like, no,
I guess so.
I think with a lot of what you're saying, honestly, like, and I'm guilty. I've done this before. Like, I think it was probably part of the factor in my Nosferatu experience. Like, I couldn't not come up there with some level of expectation. But like, it sounds like you just weren't in the headspace for this movie at what it was, whether it was the marketing or just your affinity for Longlegs that really colored it. Like,
I guess
think,
so.
Like, but like, and I don't mean, like I said, like it happens. I do the same thing. That's why I try to dodge as much stuff as I can. But like, I think for me, like even that review you sent me that was Jeremy John's review, he said like when the first kill happened, he was like, is this movie trying to be unserious? But he was also talking about the second kill of the movie, which was kind of weird because the first kill is obviously
one, right?
Yeah. And so I'm like,
the first kill is great.
If you don't, well, that's this right. The second one, if the first one in the store, like right away, like I don't know how at any point that movie, like we go from that scene and then all of a sudden, I can't remember his name for the life of me right now, but the guy that plays the dad, Adam Scott has the flamethrower, and he's like,
Mark S.
And then they freeze frame it like, okay, if that wasn't like over the top and clear enough, like there's the constant, like they just joke and beat after beat. Like is so much and so consistent that I don't know like how you can do that without having those expectations, I guess.
Speaking of the marketing, I was like looking through the IMDb photos, and there was an alternative version of the poster that I really liked. I'm pretty sure it's like supposed to be a parody of some other movie, but it looks, I don't know, whatever. I'll just read it. It's like mostly text, and it just says, it's a movie about twin brothers who discover a toy monkey that likes killing their family. There's outrageous violence, shocking gore, and unspeakable tragedies. For Osgood Perkins, it's pretty fucking funny. And that's like exactly the tone of the movie. It's like self-aware, it's funny, it's not taking itself seriously, and that's clear from the jump, from before the jump even, I think.
So I just want to hop on that. Cutting Osgood Perkins a lot of slack. He's a Nepo baby, and I don't respect that at all. I think having a personal story and dredging it out into a long ass movie that felt way too long because of all the added, like if it, like I get what you're saying.
It's like 90 minutes.
It felt so long to me, dude. And again, it's because I kept like, enjoying so much of it and grinding to a hole. It felt like I was about to come and then being blue ball.
You were enjoying your projections onto the movie is what it sounds like. You were like,
sure,
there was this one 13-second scene where they zoom in slowly on the monkey, and I really love that. But then all of a sudden they were putting a joke on
all right,
me.
let's talk about the movie. Let's talk about the movie. We're being too bold about the themes and the overall. I think I want to hit beat for beat what I was beefing with here. Okay, so first off, opening scene, great. It shows the rat chewing the wire, causes the thing. Again, very Final Destination light, I would say, and I'm going to come back to that. It shoots the harpoon. It sees the guy, pulls his entrails out. And then, it goes buck wild. He melts the monkey. The monkey's burning his face. Like some very Terminator imagery. So solid, that opening. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a crazy thrill ride.
It's going to be a super dark and scary movie.
It's going to be crazy, and it was crazy. But I was excited for that, okay? And then so we get into the movie. They find the monkey. They're setting up this like brother dynamic. And they spend a lot of time setting that up. Like when you said, oh, it took you to the ant dying. Bro, that's so slow of you. I was like, well, dude, it's because there's 30 minutes building to the ant dying. It's like 25 minutes of setting up the intro, followed by the brothers getting bullied, wanting to drop the bowling ball on his head in his sleep, which is, again, another Chekhov's gun that comes back later. Like, they set up a lot of stuff, and I appreciate it. But, like, I think that whole brother stuff at the start, they set it up for a long time. And by the time we see that handsome guy playing the main character, I'm like, oh, shit. And then I realized they're doing the what is it, like the Norbit thing or the Jack and Jill thing with Adam Sandler. They're just going to clone him. And I was like, I didn't expect that. I tried not to check out the trailers or read that poster that was like, it's two twin brothers. I had no idea it was going to be twin brothers until getting into it. I just knew this was going to be a crazy movie, I guess. And as it goes on, I think the part where I started to question the humor, if it was just over the top gore and like each joke was the death, like when you watch the show 1,000 Ways to Die on Spike TV, they set up the bad guy in a cartoonish way. They die cartoonishly. It's like a very small, fun vignette that you can appreciate, and there's a bit of a small narrative. And it's obviously forced. But with these, I just, and I guess with the backstory of Osgood Perkins' family matters, like, I guess that's the point. You don't want, the aunt to be a child molester. You don't, it's funny, and you want to be able to enjoy these, but also just feel like, wow, that is an unruly death. But as it went on, the part that lost me, where I'm talking about trying to be as objective and subjective about the subject matter, is the comedy didn't land for me personally. And I think the scene with the priest, he looks at the people in the funeral hall or in the church and he goes, damn, I mean, shit. And he's like, it is what it is. Could be. I was just like, oh, it's so fucking out of, like, even for this movie that's so goofy and it gets a pass on everything, that specifically stuck out as like a little too far from my accepting of like how the pastor would act. And again, I think it's because I started wanting these Final Destination, level suspense, the projection we're talking about, that when they got to like that, like over the top joking about it for that scene specifically, it kind of made me put up a bit of a wall. Like, oh, am I about to watch something that is like way more corny? And then I was starting to second guess some of the technical aspects. And when I'm getting into this, I know I'm ranting here, but when the aunt dies and she falls on the fishing hooks and she gets back up, she goes upstairs and she's taking them out. I was like, very Final Destination to have they're going to blue ball you. They're going to get you really close to death and then hit you somewhere else. But then when she leans over the stove to smell the gas, and it just lingers on like her nose smelling the gas, and then you hear click, 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 click. In a Final Destination, they would show like her thumb or her dress catching, or a fish hook catching, the igniter, and it lighting her on fire. But visually, out of context, that shot is like, it looks like she leaned over to light her face on fire. And again, later at the end, when there's the bowling ball cannon thing, that was, I think I texted you this, the ninja swords in the hallway fall, the vibrations cause the cannon to go off that got cocked from the same Rube Goldberg machine. But what are the odds that cannonball shoots through the floor 3 stories away? Like, again, I'm just saying, like, the Rube Goldberg machines that they got set up and the Macaulay Culkin Home Alone stuff felt so stupid. I get the random
This is
death.
You're projecting again. I hate to say
you're
this,
using therapy terms to invalidate me. I don't believe you.
I'm not trying to say like it's an invalidating thing, but it's just like, because obviously it completely shaped your experience. But I just mean, like, it feels like you're like, well, this movie wasn't like Final Destination. It didn't have the same setups. Like, I feel like you saw the first kill, right? Which was logically explained. The rat bites the rope and it shoots
They do that 2 or 3 times. The bullet shoots the hornet's nest.
But why did the tree drop down to lower the hornet's nest into shot range? Okay, this monkey does, like, it's like clearly evident in the movie.
Yeah.
Why do you hear the shotgun?
You're missing what I'm saying.
On. Why does because you're looking for logical, like, reasonable, elaborate explanations for why all this is happening.
No, I'm looking for visuals that explain it better. And I'm saying, like, the edit's not doing it any favors, okay? Like, I'm not saying
But like, let me get to the shotgun. Let me talk about the shotgun when the real estate agent gets blown up, okay?
She gets turned into Dustin Birdshot. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, we don't know what was in there, first of all. But anyway, it drops over. But again, also the point meant to be wildly exaggerated. But you can hear, whatever causes the shotgun to fall over, but you can hear as it gets cocked mid-fall and then lands and shoots. Like, these are not meant to be elaborate. Like, it just so happened that the first scene had that one. And, like, why does the bowling ball earlier in that sequence get shifted into that box to then be dropped in? Like, it's because, like, again, this magic monkey does all this stuff. We see the hornet's nest initially is way up. And then before it gets wound up, the tree drops. Or I think it was just after it gets wound up, the tree drops, so the branch is in there. And, like, so, like, it's not Final Destination. It's not meant to have these elaborate tension building, or, like, but again, in the old woman scene, you can hear the sound of the gas. She smells the gas. She bends over to smell the gas. A magic spark lights it, and her head gets caught on fire. Then it cuts down to the stairs where there's all of a sudden some vase of, like, flowers or whatever that she then walks into, which causes her to slip down the hill and then right through the sign.
No, the realtor left those flowers for her, I think.
Right. So, but, like, again, they're there. They show that they're there. Like, I feel like this, so much of your criticism, though, is, like, again, like, what you were, why wasn't it this? Why wasn't it that? And, like, when you talk about the characters, too, like, can you explain, or can we, like, and I'm genuinely asking, like, I'm not saying this as if I know the answer, but, like, is there any character we can point to that you would say acts reasonably or grounded, like, it at really any series, like, other than the mom, I guess,
main
who, like,
character
does
acts
absolutely
pretty reasonably.
Okay, so when a woman explodes in the middle of his face and he just, like, no-sells it and pulls out her thumb, like, that's not a reasonable, like,
it's called shock. If you just understood more psychology, Shea, it's called shock, okay? It's so real.
It happens
Trauma is
to him,
very
like,
important.
3 times in a row, right? When the woman explodes and he's just like, oh, fuck, we need to get the hell out of this hotel.
You're totally right. I get what you're saying. I know what you're saying. But like, I don't think you get what I'm saying. I just, please let me rephrase it.
Go ahead.
You know, I've said A and B and you've crucified A. But my 2 points, you know, when you're like, why does the tree lower? And I'm talking about cinema language, you know, when you see the tree lowering, it's adding suspense. Like, is that it's getting bigger, it's getting towards us. What are the odds? I'm sure, you know, it's building suspense for us, the audience, and the characters. And I'm saying that's fine. Magic's fine. Magic sparks fine. What I'm getting at is that, you know, the setups are semi grounded. You know, they're showing you things. It's a Chekhov's gun. Here's a gun in the closet. It's gonna go off. You know, and like I get it, but it's just I felt like again the bowling ball thing. It shows a trap in the staircase on a different side of the building, and when it goes off at the end because he needs to die, the bowling ball through film, through the angles of the camera, it's now teleporting, angling it, not the staircase, not anywhere near the front door, but to the back corner of this room that's in a giant apartment building in downtown, wherever the fuck at Maine that they are at. I started feeling like the filmmaking was taking shortcuts to give us these things. And it bothered me because they can clearly they've shown us that they do such a good job setting up some tension, setting up some, like, again, just in the enjoyable scene. If he died from someone killing him at the end the same way, like if say the bowling ball thing happened or whatever, but it was just on top of his shelf, you know, and it was like he kept it for his mom that he missed so much, and you know, because of the plane crash, it rolled off slowly and domed him. That would have been fine, but I felt like that canon and the Macaulay Culkin aspect for a guy who's paranoid about dying was so dumb. Like, and I know it's
not well. Okay, again,
you know what I mean? Do you see what I'm saying though? Can you not see where I'm coming from?
I think you're
at
being
all?
wildly nitpicky about a movie where it's like, again, like, to be clear, I've seen this twice. I would have
You're
to.
just gaslighting me.
I have to think about the exact logic that the movie takes at the end, but definitively, like, they don't show us where that canon setup is relative to anything. We just see that it's up somewhere, like they show the ball move,
and that feels lazy.
Well, okay.
To me, it feels like
but
poor
like,
setup.
If they didn't show me that at all and his head got blown off, I would have had the exact same reaction. And I don't think like that seems like an odd detail, I guess, to get like hung up on and like be a factor that sways this so negatively towards it. Like, I think like if a Final Destination movie lacked all of these logical setups and payoffs,
it wouldn't be a movie.
That's the point
It'd
of
be
those
so
movies.
bad. Yeah.
But that's not what this movie is. That's not what it's trying to be. And like, again, like, I don't even like the fact, I would even kind of push back on the fact that you said, like, when we see the tree lower, it creates suspense. And it's like a nitpick of your language, but to me, it was anticipation, right? Like, and I think that the fact that you use the word suspense is still framing this in this horror kind of movie where, like, I'm not expecting something scary to happen from that. I'm expecting something funny. Like, literally, I think it was our screening that Adriana and I saw, when it lowers, you heard like an audible, like, oh boy, like someone literally was like, oh no.
Yeah,
like,
my theater too. My theater too.
Yeah, right. So like, again, it's like, and like I said, I'm not like hammering you for the like language use, but I just think like, I think so much of this experience, like if you went into Malignant not ready for what you were going in for and expecting something else, then I see why you don't like that movie. And I think if you're someone like you really like Longlegs and like, again, I really like the same aspects of it that you did, but I think I knew what this was going to be from the teaser trailer that I had seen. Like, I feel like that's what kind of surprised me, I guess, that there was these negative reactions. And like, I spent a lot of time after you sent the message last night when we were talking about it, just looking up what other people were thinking. And I think a lot of it was that expectation, like people that thought Longlegs was the scariest movie of last year went in seeing the newest from the same guy. And then it was again, like, I agree with Adriana. This was a straight up comedy with gore elements in it. Like, was like, I like, to me, but I get why, if you're going in expecting that same tension that Longlegs had, you're like, what the fuck? It's a completely different movie.
Yeah.
But I think that's really, what ultimately hurts this. Like, if you go in, like, I feel like it's competently enough made. I think the performances are funny. Like, I think like the comedy works for me, I guess, like for some people it might not work too, but
I was just gonna say, like, even expectations aside, I think if you don't get on with this movie's particular sense of humor, or you don't find it funny, then it just will not work for you. And I think that's totally fine. Like, I think that's a very like, it makes sense that a lot of people will just not like vibe with this movie at all, won't find things like the pastor funny, or the mom joking about death at a funeral. Like, it's like it has a very particular kind of sense of humor, and if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work, and it won't. And I think that's that's valid. But
I think
yeah.
my fear with being on the naysayer side of this argument is that a lot of people will go, it's called dark humor. Look it up. But it's like, I maybe I'm full of nitpicks
I
and
would bet
you know.
3 years from now you watch this movie again and we're like together that you like this movie. Like I genuinely believe that. I think if you've reset, if you turned on Malignant, like turned around on that, I think the same thing will happen here once you're able to recalibrate. Like maybe not, right? Like again, there's like the humor is subjective. I'm not saying it's too smart or anything like that. It's pure, like a lot of the reviews like, oh, he made it for the sickos, people that find this stuff funny. Like, yes, sure. If you don't get it, you don't get it. But I want to, if I can make one last point on the pro side, and then I'll kind of wrap my end of this up.
You had no negatives whatsoever.
No, like
I've said there's a lot of pros,
like,
but you've just zero negatives on your end.
It's not like I loved the experience of it. Like I had a lot of fun with it. It's not a movie that I'm going to like think about in some like lingering, profound way. Like there's like nothing in this moment will linger in my head, like the tension moments of Long Legs. Like it's not like I never once have said this is a perfect movie. It's a pure movie. It is exactly what it wants to be, and that's all that it is. I don't think it's a kind of movie where you can project onto and like think of like a very deep meaning. Like they very much lay this out. And I think that kind of ties into what I want to make. Like there is too much smart stuff about this movie that's intentional that I think like also helps shape my confidence about my feelings about this movie. Like the only death, right, that has any consequence and like that you feel and lingers throughout the movie, it's ultimately the thrust of the story with the brothers, is the mother's death. And it is the only one that is brutal and not funny. And that is obviously intentional because it creates sort of the emotional catalyst for the rest of the movie. Right? Every other death that's shown is comical, or they show it to be comical, even if we see it like after the fact, like in the montage thing and stuff like that. And like so much of the shots, like I like going from Long Legs, the intentionality of how Osgood Perkins and whoever he works with for like cinematography is so clearly thought out, and just like little details, like all of the things that like pay off, like I never in like my wildest dreams, like it was kind of a funny note, but like when they're like, oh, it's skydiving, oh, they do weddings, and like even that like pays off because like you don't even know that that's going to happen or that that's a possibility, like that kind of mass death that happens at the end. But even things like where in the closet, like the transition shot, if you look in the closet, it's like the wallpaper is of trees, and then we cut from the same interior of that closet to the outdoor of the trees with the sirens and stuff like that. But one of the notes that I thought was really funny, I only noticed this on my second watch, was in the closet where the gun was, there's like a sign that says, guns don't kill people, people kill people.
Kill people.
And
yeah,
that like sent me to the moon. Like I was laughing after that. But like, even too, like, again, one of the hardest laughs I had in the movie, again, if you've listened this far, we've spoiled everything pretty much, but when they're wheeling the body out, yay, and the cheerleaders start, like, I was wheezing, and, like, I don't, like, both times, like, to me, again, like, this was, like, where Long Legs, like, is the complete antithesis, I think, to this movie, to be honest with you, like, that movie rewarded, like, the purpose of that movie is to stare in every vacant corner of the movie, to analyze it, to consume as much of it as you can, and intake absolutely everything, because so much is happening in the background. And then for your follow-up movie to be something this pure and, again, obvious, like there's little rewards, like the picture and things like that, to be had if you watch that. But, like, it's not, like, to me, this was like a perfect 3.5 to 4 movie. This is exactly what it meant to be. Nothing more, nothing less. If you don't get on the wavelength, like, I totally get that. But I think there's a difference between like, oh, I think it was good, I understand what it was going for, and it just didn't work for me, versus like, oh, this movie was terrible because I didn't think it was funny or I couldn't get on the wavelength or whatever. Like, I think those are kind of different elements, and I genuinely would like, if we're still doing this, which I hope we are, in 3 years, to revisit this, because I think, like, in the right mindset with the right, like, it blew me away. Like, I was stunned, frankly, that there was people that were disappointed by this, and I think a lot of it, at least in what I've read and heard here, is like a lot about like what expectations you had for it. And I get that, like, part of that's marketing. Like, I think Longlegs got screwed by their own, I mean, financially it was obviously a ginormous success, but like the scariest movie of the year and all this kind of stuff, and Nick Cage is terrifying, and then I'm watching him like do like these little bits, like, it killed me. But I'm laughing in the scariest movie of the year, and pretty consistently throughout. So like, I think this, if anything, is really why I like to think that I write the reviews that I write, so that if you don't know anything about this movie, which again is I think everyone should be their preferred method of going into something, that you could read something like my review or Adriana's review that sets the expectation. So you just at least know what to be ready for. Because like I said, Malignant is a very comparable movie, I think, in like those kinds of ways, at least from a tone and intent perspective. And that was another case where if I went in going, like, I wasn't going to watch it because I'm like, I don't need to see Insidious 19. And then when Stuckman was like, oh, it was like actually this like B movie, really funny schlock, I'm like, oh, this was the funniest, like, again, one of the best experiences I've ever had at a movie. And I think, if anything, this is like a good example of trying to set yourself. And again, like, I'm shitting on you because it's the second one we've done, but like, I really do think that's why my Nosferatu was probably impacted. Like, if that was any other filmmaker and it was like, oh, this is a guy's first movie or his second movie, I would have been like, whoa, that was great. But like, I think, like I said, it was an unenthusiastic 7 from me, because I was like, well, I've seen so much and I couldn't disassociate my expectations. So like, I definitely get it, but I think that's my final pitch anyway on the upswing of the movie. But again, I feel like, I'm sorry, Adriana, I definitely knew me and Brandon were going to fight for most of this episode,
No,
but
it's
I
fine.
definitely want to give you a word, and then I think it's only fair to let Brandon have the last word as being the 2-on-1 victim again this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think you summed up my thoughts on it as well.
I hope so. That was a 15-minute closing. Fuck.
All I'll say to like add on is, yeah, I don't think this is a perfect movie. There were things that didn't quite work for me, like some of the child actor who played the young twins. There are moments where I was like, it just kind of took me out, because
No, it's supposed to be bad because it's a goofy movie, Adriana.
Well,
I'm sorry,
no,
go on.
no excuses there. Like, I think, yeah,
I agree with you there. I found that to be another criticism, but you know.
Yeah, and just like, again, some of the like more the family drama stuff, some loose threads, whatever. But I think I can look past those things just because of how much fun I had with the rest of the movie, and yeah, it just worked for me. That's where I'm gonna leave it. I'll let you finish it off, Brandon.
Right on. Well, okay, that was a thrilling episode, and yeah,
You're not even going to take an actual last word?
I got nothing to say. I could go on for hours about how I don't, I get where you're coming from. It is a very holier than thou, you just gotta have love in the game kind of thing. I get it. I get that I'm the negative Nelly here. But yeah, like, technically speaking, again, like, the child acting didn't love. I found like the casting a little bit distracting. Like, there's a lot of stuff in it that just, outside of the comedy, didn't land for me. It didn't really make me feel like I was like super thrilled. I spent $40 on 2 tickets. I didn't get the advanced pre-screening you guys got, maybe. So I remember thinking like, $40 for that plus concessions and the gas and parking to get there. $100 for that? Are you kidding me? So, like framing it from a real world perspective, because we like to close on talking about theater experiences. If you're going to overspend at the movies, at least enjoy it. I think my immediate feedback to myself before I texted you guys was, I think I would have enjoyed this a lot more on streaming. I think if I saw this as like a Netflix original that came out and I was at home alone, or like just like in a casual atmosphere, But I feel like going to see it in a theater with serious expectations, which are my fault, I get that now. But if I went in less, excited and thinking like, oh, and also, as you guys know, I was having an awful week, and I was like, finally, some escapism. And then I'm just like, these jokes aren't landing. I paid $100 to enjoy the movie tonight with my girlfriend. Awful. You guys pre-screening, great week. I get it. Maybe in a couple of years I'll find.
To be clear, I did
more levity.
pay to see this movie again, and I just last night and had all my snacks and everything else, and to do it again, so I think that's also part of it. But
also,
I think your personal side of it too. But
I will also just say, when we went to the advanced screening, it was like the day of the blizzard, and leaving my home was like the last thing I wanted to do. It was like an exhausting week too. Not to compare exhausting weeks, like you had.
I get it, but what you're saying is you would have rather seen it on streaming that day at least.
No.
So
That's
totally
the thing.
Theater,
like,
I
was
totally
like
disagree with that.
I was like,
no,
I
know.
I don't really want to do this, but I'll go, just for Shea. And then I was like so unexpectedly delighted by it that it just like made it worth the trek out into the snow. I was like, yeah, you know what? I had fun.
And I am jealous you guys had like the peak theater, like people who were keen to see it.
I was gonna add to that too. Like you said, there was like you went to the same showtime, literally the same showtime. I was supposed to be 7:40 last night, and our crowd for that was great. Like a lot of fun. Like that's the moments where I feel like it enhances with friends, especially like people but like even just the broader theater, like to be having that shared, like all the laughter and the bits and all of that. Like I think really enhances that. And like genuinely, I do wonder, like having the weeks that you've been having, like I'm not really stunned. Like I said, like I think a totally normal Brandon clocking, like if you and I went to the theater last night and watched it for the first time because you've been here for a week, like I genuinely believe in my heart of hearts that a mindset might have been a problem with that. Like you're just
huge problem.
And so,
I think I'm a little aware, but I was trying to keep my biases very technical again, like. No,
I get it.
For viewers at home, I work in movies. I worked like 80 hours, 84 hours for the last 5 weeks straight. So, when you get off work at 6 and you're racing home to see a 7:40 show, I showed up at 8. Like I'm the bad guy, and I showed up. There was a gosh darn a Kia commercial playing at 8, and it was a 7:40 show. I went from feeling so bad and rushed and like, oh my God, because I just got off work, racing to see this movie, to be like, what is wrong with you, Cineplex? Like, I should have missed the first 20 minutes, at least the first 5, but fuck it, to still be playing ads for cars, not even movie trailers.
Yeah.
So we sat down, and as soon as this Kia commercial ended, it was like, don't be a Tommy Texter. And I was like, bro, the pre-show's going hard on this one. Like, so yeah, maybe it was my personal life that caught up with me this week, but I did enjoy a lot of this movie. I could not get behind a lot of the humor, and therefore I couldn't get behind a lot of the other choices. Again, casting, the kid acting, I think I'm so glad you gave me one valid opinion, or you said something I agreed with that wasn't just like, get fucked, Brandon. But yeah, the kid acting I thought was a little rough because it does hinge on it for like 30 minutes. The opening was so strong. And I did sign the agreement to be like, oh, this is going to be crazy. There's going to be Rube Goldberg machines. And there's diminishing returns. And I even like the anti-comedy with the guy getting trampled in the woods in the sleeping bag, and they open it up. At first, I didn't think they're going to show it. And I was like, that's kind of funny. They're skipping over that death. And then they do show it. And I'm like, oh, they did both. They skipped over it and gave us the payoff. And like, it was funny. And it was like, that bit I thought was pretty well written. Like, I did love bits of this movie just as a whole, because what I felt was like the glue was the story. It bothered me, and I wish, for whatever it could be, I'm not a Hollywood writer, I wish that family story was able to somehow wrap up, even if a little bit superficially. Just give me something a little bit more, because otherwise, if that was the train going town to town and the kills or the comedy was each town on that trip, that train was rocky. It was not a fun ride necessarily. The towns were great, but the ride, the thing that put us through, it was rough. And again, like the weird pseudo daddy issue cop guy, what was that about? That guy was in the story just to kidnap our protagonist and deliver him to the third act. So again, like,
exactly, what a great utility.
That's what I'm saying. So for the last like half hour where it's like, oh, it's a goofy movie, relax, Brandon. I get it. I know I'm being critical,
sorry,
but there's a lot of stuff like that that bothered me, and I just
TV
had to vent
timeout
that.
too. Was that the same actor from Halloween Ends?
Oh, with the hair?
Yes.
Which is hilarious to me, is like a shoehorned in. I don't want to get in the rabbit hole of that.
I haven't even seen Halloween Ends, but read that he's in it.
That could be a great trilogy episode or something we could do.
It is. Yeah, Roland Campbell.
I thought
Holy
I recognized him, and it was really funny because I also felt like he was very shoehorned into that movie at the last minute of a trilogy. But
that's brutal.
No, I don't want to go back and forth. I am leaving you with the last word on that. I do find it interesting that it's in 2 weeks now. It's been Shea and Adriana, negative on Amelia Perez, and Brandon not positive, but more positive, I would say. And then kind of an inverse, but still Shea and Adriana on the same battle lines, more or less.
Well, I knew I'd be a heel on this podcast, but like, I think with the Amelia Perez I was like, let me try to big up this movie that is clearly not good. Like, let me stand up for the kid on the school ground to these two bullies. Where in this case, you're friends with a popular kid, this neon baby demon fucking movie. And I'm like, actually, guys, narratively it was really weak. And you're like, no, it's about his trauma, Oz Perkins. And that's why I had to like hop in on it. I just want to
point out that Brandon did lower his rating for Amelia Perez on Letterboxd after our last podcast. So
I waited to post my review on this movie.
Just saying.
I haven't letterboxed this movie because I was like, almost like my own trauma now. I was like, I gotta sit with it before I review it. But then more importantly, I gotta talk to my close friends and family about how I feel about it because I'm so conflicted. And if anything, maybe you've helped me bring it up a half mark, but I was gonna rate it worse than EP just because I was like so angry with myself watching this movie.
That's an objectively bad take.
Here's the thing though, is I realized I was being bitter, and that's why I needed to talk to you guys, because I also realized
you need a hug is what I'm hearing.
I would rewatch this movie tomorrow on streaming if it was easy and convenient, because I do feel like I was not in the right headspace. Again, like leaving your job and going straight to a theater sober, and then having like just a terrible day and being late. You walk in and then you're also expecting it, to be like a James Wan and Longlegs collab essentially. So you're like, ooh, it's going to have this paranormal monkey with Final Destination. I love Final Destination. That's also why I was like, give me a taste. And it gave me like fucking a baguette, like bread and butter. And I wanted like at least like a salad. I'm not saying a full meal, but like more nutritious than a piece of bread, like it was so Final Destination light. Anyways, my final remarks is it wasn't an awful movie. I'm coming down so hard on it, but it realistically just didn't jive with me at all. And I'm sure that will change, much like not Maleficent, Malignant.
Maleficent, a very different movie.
Very different, because I also pre-COVID, I went there with a girlfriend and it was like a bad time. And like before the movie, we go see this movie for some escapism in the pandemic. And I'm like, oh, it's going to be spooky, scary horror, unlike my life, which is spooky, scary horror. And then I go and it's like, this Matrix style bullet time, backwards shooting, body horror kind of. And I was like, oh, that was a letdown. Great movie on its own legs, but I know I projected there, so I appreciate that you could call a spade and see exactly where I'm coming from, knowing me for so long. But I wanted more consistency with this movie, and I still don't think it's like a good movie, but I think there's a lot of great aspects to it that I just wish clicked and it hit for me. Like I couldn't orgasm.
Well,
I had a very bad time in bed with this movie.
Next time you come over, I think some Substances and a Malignant and the Monkey double feature are on the horizon. So if that doesn't work, then I will concede that you're genuine and your feelings are completely real and authentic. But no, I think this is a lot of fun. I love this kind of stuff, especially when we disagree. I knew Companion was like, we all feel the same way. But no, I think the disagreement, to give you one too, because I know you really want it. I have to admit, having seen it twice, I do not remember the correlation between the swords dropping and the box. So
yes,
you might be like, again, I can't hand up. I don't remember. I don't know if
it was the vibrations of the swords in the concrete vibrating the building, not the plane crash, but the vibrations of the sword hitting the concrete.
Well, yeah, again, I could be right. I don't know, and I can't defend it, so I'll give you that one on the closer, okay?
Finally, okay. Well, I've been validated, vindicated.
But no, we've gone over an hour and a half here now, so I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. We hope you guys are enjoying the podcast so far. I want to put a shout out to people. If you guys have suggestions about things you want us to hear, us talk about, movies you want our opinions on, or things to watch, definitely let us know in the comments or messages, wherever you can reach us. Definitely share that with us because we'd love to do that too. But wherever you're listening, whether it's YouTube or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever, give us a follow or subscribe, and make sure to like or rate the show. And I think to give the big sign off this week, if you do have to cough in the movie theater, please remember to cover your mouth. And if it's a cough attack, please just leave the theater. Thanks, guys.